part, I've taken my inside cover and I've put adhesive all around the edges of this. You definitely want to do this, otherwise you're going to have some gaps between the chipboard and your cover. So peel your adhesive off. Make sure too that you have put the adhesive all the way up to the edge of your paper. And if you're having trouble with that, maybe you need to use some wet glue in there to fill in the blanks. But I totally recommend this. I'm using 3/8 inch Miracle tape. Again, please use your preferred adhesive. I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna center it. Now, you kind of wanna eyeball this to make sure that you're gonna have the coverage that you need. So a lot of times I'm gonna stand up and look directly above my project just to make sure I can kind of see how it looks. I'm gonna put this on the bottom. I'm kind of looking at it. It looks pretty good. And I think I'm good to stick it down. And as you can see, all of those unruly edges get completely covered up by this. Now, you can always take your bone folder and of course go over it to press down and make sure everything is sticking properly. Remember too that you're going to be covering all of this with your decorative papers. You could also, if you would prefer, you can make this inside cover printed paper. You could cover the whole thing in printed paper if you wanted to. But I kind of like to work with one color and then add my printed paper on top and just pressing it down and pressing it down. Now remember that this is the back side. Notice too that your seams are all in the middle. I usually will take my bone folder and gently I'm going to pull this up to where my crease is. And again, you can go back in your bone folder. And so that's your first crease, that where your spine is. You're going to flip it over and you're going to do the same thing. You just gently want to bend it. Remember, you have to break the grain of the paper. So do this gently so you don't tear your paper. And then just bend it. And that is the skeleton of your album. It looks good. Again, you can go over it with a bone folder to make sure everything is adhered properly. Feel free to change the color, but this is basically how you build the foundation of your chipboard album. We're going to make a hinge for your album. The first thing you want to do is you want to start with a 7x7 piece of paper. Now this, you can alter the size of this depending on the size of your album, but my album right now is 7.5 by 7. I'm actually using the height of the albums to determine this. So my hinge is 1/2 inch shorter than the height of my album. So I cut down my piece of paper to 7x7. I just want to show you. This is what the hinge looks like inside the album. You can't see because the pages are in there, but I'm going to show you how to construct this. If you've purchased one of my kits, I've already pre-made your hinge. If you want to remake this album with your own supplies, I want to show you how to do this because I think this is really kind of a useful tip. This is what the hinge looks like when it's not in the album. If you want to compare it to like peaks and valleys, so you have 3 peaks and then your valleys are in between this. This is the part that sits up in the album like this, and you attach your pages to this. And then this back part is what's going to adhere onto the back of your, or onto the front of your spine. So in order to create this hinge, I'm going to show you how I do this. You'll need a scoreboard to do this. I'm using the Stampin' Up! Scoreboard. It's pretty simple. You're going to have to make 9 different score marks. The first score mark is at a 1/2 inch. So I'm going to come in and do a 1/2 inch score mark. And from here on out, I'm going to do 3/4 of an inch every 3/4 of an inch. So my next score mark is 1 1/4. Then I'm going to go to 2 inches, 2 3/4, 3 1/2, 4 1/4, 5 inches, 5 3/4, and then 6 1/2. Now, you're going to wind up with a 1/2 inch here and a 1/2 inch here. And that is what this is. That's these two ends right here. That is going to go down like that. So just so you know that. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this piece of paper and I'm going to turn it so it's horizontal. And I'm going to number this. This is an easier way to do it. I'm going to put numbers all along the edge. 1 at the bottom, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 10 at the top. I used 1/2 inch double-sided adhesive to do this part. You can use any adhesive. You can use a wet glue. I've never done wet glue. I prefer double-sided tape because it's easier. And I'm going to put a piece of tape in 3 different things. Now let me just get this close so you guys can see where the numbers are. In between the score lines is what I'm calling a panel. So I'm going to go to the first number 3 panel. I'm going to take a piece of double-sided adhesive and I'm going to put a piece of adhesive down the center of that panel. Do not cover your score marks. You're going to be folding on this. So I'm going to put a piece of tape there. Then I'm going to skip and skip and skip, and I'm going to go up to panel number 6 and put it in the middle. Remember, don't cover your score lines. And then I'm going to go up to panel number 9 and put a piece of tape there. Don't worry about, I tend to go over because it's just easier to come back in and then trim off the excess. So I'll come in and trim, trim, so I've lined up my adhesive on the separate panels. Remember, you have tape on panel 3, 6, and 9. Now here's where the confusing part gets. You have your score line. You're going to fold the score line between panels 2 and 3. Panel 2 is what's going to adhere onto panel 3. So I'm going to peel off this. I'm going to fold at the score line. I'm going to put 2 onto 3. Now I'm going to fold this top part back. And so now you can see I have 1 and 4 showing. Now I'm going to take panel 5 and I'm going to fold that onto panel 6. I'm going to peel this back. Remember, you're always going on that score line between the panels that you're folding together. I'm going to fold panel 5 onto panel 6. I'm going to fold this back so you can see. So now I have 1, 4, 7 showing. Now I'm going to fold panel 8 onto panel 9. Remember, it's always on that score between the 2 panels. Now I know this looks just like a hot mess, but I promise you it'll work out this way. Then I'm going to take it and I'm going to flip back anything that is not folded. By the way, this is going to be my back panel, the back of it. Now I'm going to do this so you guys can see it. And I'm folding up and I wind up with 3 peaks and 2 valleys and my 2 edge pieces. This is how you make the hinge. It's that simple. It was a little confusing for me. When I turn it over, what should be showing are the numbers 1, 4, 7, and 10. This is the back of your hinge that's going to adhere into your album. So here's my album. I'm going to put adhesive on this and I'm going to adhere it to the center of my spine, and I will have these 3 pieces, which is my holder for my pages. I have applied the double-sided tape to the back of my hinge. I'm going to flip the hinge over. You can see that these are where the peaks and valleys are. You can do this now or you can do it after you put your hinge in. You want to apply a double-sided adhesive to this and to the other side on all of the peak sides. So you're going to put one piece of tape on this side and one piece of tape on this side. Repeat the process, repeat the process. By the way, these are 3/4 of an inch, so I'm using 1/2 inch Miracle tape to apply to this to give me full coverage. You could try wet glue. I've never done that, but you won't be able to do that until you're ready to put the pages on. I've applied the adhesive to each peak on my hinge. You can see I'm 2 pieces of tape. You can see it visually. I'll hold it sideways so you can see it this way. Now I'm going to peel all of the adhesive off of the back of my hinge, and I'm going to stick this down into the album. Now, your hinge is 7 inches tall. If you want to take off just maybe a shave of that, I just took off probably a 1/16 of an inch. I just stuck it on my printer and I cut, or my cutter, and I cut it down. Now, here's the hard part. If you're not feeling secure about laying this down, then I would definitely give yourself a 1/2 inch mark here and mark it down. But a lot of times I'm just kind of an eyeball kind of a crafter, and so I kind of look. I try to have equidistance from the top to the bottom. I know I have about 1/4 of an inch leadway on both ends, and I try to center it, and I stick it down. And now my hinge is in place, and it waits for my pages to be attached. That is the essence of that. You can see it when the book is closed. That's what it looks like. I'm going to show you how to make the pages for the album. Remember that your album is 7 inches wide. I like to always take a 1/2 inch off. So the width of my pages are all going to be 6.5 inches. So I'm going to cut, you're going to need 6 sheets of paper to make 3 pages. So I'm cutting that one to 6.5, and I'm going to do another one to 6.5. Now I know that the height of my page is 7 inches because I'm taking a 1/2 inch off because the height of my album is 7.5 by 7. So my pages are going to be 6.5 by 7. So I'm going to cut a 7-inch sheet of paper, except instead of an exact 7 inches, I'm probably going to come down maybe a 1/16 of an inch, maybe an 1/8 of an inch. So it's really like, if I'm doing 1/8 inches, it's 6 7/8 height. And I'm going to cut that off. And you'll see why I'm doing that in a second. Now, I'm going to make the second part of the page. I want my page to be 7 1/8 inch tall. And you'll see why in a sec. So I'm going to take 7 1/8, but I'm going to add an inch. So I'm going to make it 8 1/8 inches tall. So it's 6.5 by 8 1/8 inches tall. And now what I'm going to do is I need to create a 1/2 inch score line on this side and a 1/2 inch score line on the other side. So with my cutter, I'm going to move up. This is a 1/2 inch mark right here. I'm going to put my paper there, and I'm going to create a score line, and then I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to line it up to the 1/2 inch, and then I'm going to create a score line again, just like that. When I've created my score lines, I'm going to take my scissors, and from the score line up, I'm just going to take off a little bit of that corner, so that, again, we always do this to eliminate bulk when we fold things over. So I'm going to just trim that off and trim that off just like that. You need to repeat this process 2 more times, because what's going to happen is, if I fold this over like this will show you how the pages come together. You wind up folding these over, and then you will glue This is the only time I use wet glue in this project. You're gonna put wet glue here and glue that, and then you're gonna put wet glue here and glue that, and that's going to be your page. Now I know that doesn't look like a page, but that'll make sense once we put it onto the hinge. So finish making 2 more of these, pause the video, and then come back. We're going to create the pages for your album now. I would prefer to use wet glue on this because there gives you a little margin for error because it's really hard to line stuff up. I just squeezed some glue out. I use this glue called Crafter's Pick, the Ultimate. I've used it for years, and it is the only glue I use. It holds everything and it sticks to a multitude of surfaces. I squeeze some out on a scrap piece of paper. I just take a wooden skewer and I basically just put dots of glue along the edge of my scored sheet, and I do it one side at a time. So I just put dots of glue on there. You don't need a lot. Just make sure you go all the way to the edge with it. And if you want to, you can kind of smooth it out just a little bit. I take my panel, my flat panel, and I hold this down with my finger just to kind of give me some kind of a flat surface. I lay this on top, and of course I'm on the wrong side because I'm not paying attention. No worries, I'll put it on the inside, you'll never see it. And I lay it on top of that glue. I kind of line it up. This is why I use wet glue, because it's really hard to make a perfect line. I open it up and then I smash it down. And that is the first top of my page. Now, you know, when I told you to cut your panels a little short, because you have this fold of 1/2 inch, you can make this top panel a little shorter, and then it'll stick and it'll be a nice finished edge. So again, I take the other side, I put some glue, I just dot it along. If you have whatever your favorite wet glue is, use that. This is just my preferred glue that I've used all these years. I make sure it's up to the edges. I turn it over. I push one side down, flip it over, and done. The good thing too about this glue is that it dries perfectly clear. So even if you get a little bit of residue, you'll never see it. That is what a finished page looks like. Now I know it looks kind of odd, but once we put it in the album, you'll know why. You need to complete your other 2 pages. You need 3 of these in order to finish your album. We're going to put your pages in your album. You should have finished these 3 pages. This is what they look like. And just to give you a visual aid, the page actually is going to sit on each peak in your album like that. And so you have your adhesive in place already. And what I like to do is I don't do both of them at the same time. I do one side, then I do the other side. I peel the first strip off. I lay this on top just like that. Make sure it's flush. Fold it over and then smash it down. Now, in order to get to the other side, I will take my scissors, or a pointed if you have tweezers, and I will dig out, just got to get a hold of a layer of that tape, pull it out, and then press it down. This way you won't have any movement on your page. Do the same thing for the second page. Pull the first layer off, slip this on top, just like that. Pull it flat, press it down, come in with my scissors, grab an edge of your double-sided tape. You could do this with glue if you'd prefer, but I think this is just an easier method, and you don't have the mess of using glue. And then I just grab that tape, pull it out, push it down. And then, of course, my third and final page, pull off the adhesive, slip this on top, lay it flat, press, flip it over, take my scissors, grab an edge, pull this out and flatten it. And there is your completed 3-page photo album. I've made this album on several different occasions, and I just wanted to show you some of the ways I've started to decorate. I'm actually making one now for 4th of July. And so I want to show you that, and I'll show you a completed album that I've done using a black album. Once you've decided on the colors that you want to use, this is just to give you an idea how you can expand upon this idea. This was done in craft paper. It was the same idea. I've made 3 separate pages. And one of the things that I've done on this is that I've put extra panels in. You're going to have a lot of leftover paper from covering and making pages for your album. And these leftover panels or pieces of paper, I've made panels out of them. So all I've done was taken an extra sheet. This was the idea of a panel. I had some extra paper. I always score 1/2 inches. I think that always gives you a nice surface. I've always trimmed them down. And then what you can do is you can take this panel and slip it in to your page. You would put the glue in here. And again, for this I use wet glue as well. And then you can adhere it inside your page like this. And then you would, oh, it's just not going to work for me today. Insert it into your page just like this. And then it would be a panel that would open up. So I've done it on this side. In addition, you can always make a top flap panel like this. You would trim it down to the width of your page and it can flip up. You can, as a matter of fact, put multiple panels in on one page. So I could have this as a flip and I could do this as a flip. So I could create a waterfall on a page. You can also take panels and put it on the bottom and have them open up like this. The sky's the limit. You're only limited by your imagination. And so I would encourage you to kind of play around with it. I've also made front pockets on a cover as well, just like that. And you could have a pocket going in. You'd have to put adhesive here. So anything that you have scrap-wise left over in your album, you could easily incorporate into the panels in your album. I wanted to show you, this was an album that I am making for a kit, and I covered it all in black, and I've done it, but I've created pockets in the front here. I've also created belly bands, which is great, and so this is a belly band that flips open, and then these flip out and flip out. So I made mini hinges that I also attached, much like a big panel, just a miniature version of it. And then I've done the same thing on this side as well. When you flip this page, these are recipe card holders, and I've created mini pockets on this page that you can insert your recipe cards into. And then this was super fun. I did a waterfall effect and a belly band, and I've printed out my own recipe cards, and I've made a waterfall effect that you can have multiple recipes in this album. And of course, you can always attach photographs in here. And remember, you still have room in all of these as well to even add more recipes or family photos if you're giving this maybe to a bride for a gift and you want to give her the family recipes. And then of course there's back here and another pocket at the end. You still have options to put more flaps. You can make this as interactive as you want. Remember, you have plenty of room in here. That's why I've created the extra width on the spine, because it's a 3-inch. So easily you could thicken this up. You could put an elastic band or a decorative band around it to hold it in place. The sky is the limit for this. And I hope you enjoy making your album. I hope you make lots of albums, change your sizes, and have a fun day crafting.